My name's Sawyer Wilson. I'm the student pastor here at North Church along with my wife, Olivia, and we have a son named Trip. He's 1 year old. He's here running around somewhere. I love my family. But I have a question for you guys while we're in this series, Extravagant Generosity. My question for you tonight, just by a show of hands, have you ever had to get creative at some time in your life? You ever had to do something creative? Anybody ever been creative? Yeah, you guys have been creative? So shout out, what are some times you've been creative? Shout out at me. Yeah, okay. I did not understand any of that. Can I tell you guys about a time that I had to get a little creative? Can I tell you about a time I had to get a little creative? Okay, so some of y'all remember this, my first fall retreat as a leader, it was in 2019, and I was in charge of the games. And we were doing this game, and we called it Balloon Wars. I literally made it up. And it's called Balloon Wars. And each team had a giant trash bag full of balloons. And I don't even remember the rules of the game. But what it was they, in some way, they were going to spread out their balloons on their end of the area that we were playing in. And then they had to go pop the other team's balloons, something like that. And me and JC, we were setting up this game. And we walk out, and we have the two teams ready to play, and we go and we open up the trash bags, and we pour out the balloons, and guess what happened? Every single one of them popped immediately on the grass because it was dead grass, and I did not think it through. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what are we gonna do, JC? I don't know if he remembers it. I was like, what are we gonna do? And we had like 50 students like waiting to play a game. We're like, what are we gonna do? And we came together, we got creative, and we decided right there on the spot to change the game to capture the flag. And somebody almost got like impaled by the flag because it was like a metal pole, but it didn't happen. Everyone survived. But that was a time where I had to get creative. Me and JC got creative together to try to save that game. And the reason I ask you if you've ever been creative is because tonight I want to challenge you, I want to challenge us to get creative in our generosity. I want you to write that down. That's the title of my message tonight. Get creative in your generosity. Tonight we're going to learn how we can get creative in our generosity because we're in this series called Extravagant Generosity. One of our goals, one of our dreams for North students as a student ministry, that we have two. One is that we're going to engage in God's word, and the other is that we're gonna be extravagantly generous. Last week I told you what extravagant means. Does anyone remember? It's okay. To be extravagant means to be like absurd or crazy. So we're gonna be crazily generous. We're gonna be absurdly generous. That's our dream, that's our goal for North students. And this month, in case you weren't here last week, we did an interview with one of our Heart First House partners, an organization called Wellstead. And they're providing rest and recovery through the form of a getaway, a little vacation for people that are going through tragedies, through people that are foster care families, through people that are having a hard time in life, through people that just need a time to get away. And we're partnering with them this month, and we have a goal to raise $10,000 for Wellstead. If you have questions about what Wellstead is and what they do, you can go to our North Students YouTube page, and you're gonna see the interview that Olivia did with Wellstead right there on the YouTube page. It's about 8 minutes long. You can watch the whole thing. But we have a goal to raise $10,000, which averages out, if you add everyone that comes to North Students every week, that averages out to about $36 a person, students and leaders. $36 a person, which might sound like a lot, but that's not that much compared to 10,000, right? So last week, here in Oklahoma City, there was 190 people here. That's including students and leaders, 190 people. And we had commitment cards that we laid out here on the stage. And I asked you to come get a commitment card and write your name, write your grade, and check up 2 boxes, whether you will commit to tithe or to continue tithing, giving 10% of what you make to the local church. And then also if you would commit to make an offering, something above your tithe, to Wellstead. And we had 113 commitments to tithe. And that's insane. Here's why. Only 5% of churchgoers around the world actually tithe. And that is like 70%, 60%, I don't know, I don't do math. It's like 60% of y'all that were here last week committed to tithe. So give yourselves a round of applause. I'm so proud of you. Make sure you follow through on that. And of those 113 commitments to tithe, 109 made commitments to give to Wellstead. Another round of applause. That's awesome. But I have a question for you guys and for myself. I've been asking myself this since last Thursday. And I hope that this doesn't sound negative, but more of like you understand the heart behind this question. There was 190 people here. So why didn't 190 people commit to give to Wellstead? That's the question that I asked. And the reason, I think, is maybe because we don't understand what we have to give. I think maybe we don't know how to get creative in our generosity. I think maybe we think, well, I'm just a 6th grader and I don't have money of my own. Or maybe you think I'm a 12th grader and I'm helping to provide for my family even though I'm only a teenager and I don't have any money to give. And I'm not telling you that you're wrong for thinking like that. That is 100% okay and that's 100% real. But I'm here to change your thinking. I'm here to challenge your thinking tonight and ask you to get creative in your generosity. And when we do that, when we get creative in our giving, when we get creative in our generosity, I think that 109 can easily become 190. Are you with me? All right, so tonight you're gonna have a chance to make a commitment if you haven't already made that or if you weren't here last week. We're gonna do that in small groups. But to learn what it looks like to be creative, I want us to turn to a story in the book of 2 Kings. So if you have your Bible or you have a digital Bible, go to the book of 2 Kings. And 2 Kings is what we're reading right now on reading plan 2, which is not the North Students reading plan, but it's one of the reading plans that we do at North Church. If you have questions about how to get on reading plan 2 as well, talk to me, talk to your small group leader. But 2 Kings covers a lot of events that happened in the the years 800 all the way to the years 500 BC. So anywhere from 800 to 500 years before Jesus lived here on earth. And these events show us a lot of the different kings of Israel and Judah. And what's interesting is that we're in the book of 2 Kings, but originally 1st and 2nd Kings were one scroll. They were one book written together, and it was just called Kings. Oh, pretty funny. But then when they wrote the Septuagint, which was the Old Testament in Greek, the Greek alphabet had more characters and more letters than the original Hebrew alphabet, so they had to split it up into 2 scrolls. So that's why we have 1st Kings and 2nd Kings. Just a little, if you're a Bible nerd like me, that's just a little fun fact for you. And tonight we're reading from 2nd Kings. 1st and 2nd Kings come after 1st and 2nd Samuel. And this is after King David has helped unify the tribes of Israel into one nation. And this shows the kings that follow him. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Most of them are really, really, really bad. We're not entirely sure who wrote the book of Kings, 1st and 2nd Kings. Church history tells us that it was probably Jeremiah. But the original purpose of this book was to preserve the history of these nations while they were living in exile in Babylon so that they could learn from their past. So they can learn from mistakes and also from things that went well. And that's why it's in our Bibles today, so that we can learn from the history and learn things that were good and learn things that were not so good. And in today's story, we're gonna read about a guy named Elisha. Somebody say Elisha. Elisha, the name Elisha means God is salvation. What a great prophet he was. His name by itself was just a whole sermon. God is salvation. What if I changed my name to that next week? Hey, my name is, I'm your youth pastor. My name is God is salvation. I'm sorry, my ADHD is kicking in. But anyways, Elisha was a prophet and he followed or succeeded Elijah. I know it's confusing. And Elijah was one of the greatest prophets of Israel. The role of the prophets, one of their roles was to speak on the behalf of God. One was to make sure that Israel was keeping the covenant that they had with God. And another role was to correct and challenge the injustice or immorality that was happening in the nation. In 1 Kings chapter 19, Elisha is called by God to be the next prophet after Elijah. And that starts their mentor-mentee relationship. But early in the book of 2 Kings, Elijah is taken up into heaven. He doesn't die. He literally is taken up into heaven. It's crazy. You should go read it for yourself. The Bible's not boring. You're boring. And this begins Elisha's time as the main prophet of Israel. And this is when he begins his ministry. So in 2 Kings chapter 4, we find the story of Elisha and a woman who has lost her husband and is in danger of losing her family. This is what we're going to read in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. Read it along with me. If I stop, you read the next word. One day, the widow of a member of the group of prophets came to and cried out. She comes to Elisha and cries out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves. So what's happening here is this woman, this widow, she's lost her husband. She has 2 sons. She comes to Elisha, the prophet, and says, my husband is dead. My husband had some debts. That's why there's a creditor coming. Her husband owed money or land or something to these creditors. The creditor comes, and in this day and age, there was no such thing as bankruptcy. There was no such thing as getting out of something like this. This creditor was within his legal rights to come and take this woman's 2 sons as slaves in order to cancel their debts. And he would have been able to keep them as slaves all the way until the year of Jubilee, which could be up to 50 years from then. So he was well within his rights. And this woman's freaking out and saying, my sons are going to be taken as slaves. She's like, I don't know what to do. I can't pay back these debts that my husband accrued. And this is what Elisha says to the woman. He says this in verse 2. What can I do to help you? Elisha asked. Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she says, nothing at all except a flask of olive oil. She says, I don't have anything. I don't have any money. I don't have anything to give. I have nothing except a flask of olive oil. Verse 3, and Elisha said, borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Elisha isn't just giving this woman the money to get out of her problem. He's asking her to commit to being a part of solving the problem. Her going to her neighbors and asking them for jars, that would have made her look a little bit weird. Would have made her look a little bit crazy. It would have been a little bit awkward. But Elisha is asking this woman, to step out in faith. He's asking her to obey. And how many know that obedience isn't always easy? But God calls us to obey. Verse 4, Elisha says, then go into your house after you get all these jars from your neighbors and with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask, remember she has the 1 flask, into the jars. She's pouring this olive oil into all of these jars, setting each one aside when it is filled. I don't know about you, but that math ain't mathin'. You got 1 jar, and then you're gonna fill up a bunch of jars. That doesn't make sense. Something miraculous is gonna have to happen. Verse 5. If I was this woman, I would have said, Elisha, how's that gonna work? Elisha, I don't have that much olive oil. Elisha, help, I don't know how this is gonna happen. But this is what she does. Verse 5. So she did as she was told. She did as she was told. I want to ask you, are you doing what God is telling you to do? Are you doing what God is telling you to do? Or are you hesitating? Are you making excuses? Are you just disobeying and doing the opposite? Pastor Rodney this past weekend said this, delayed obedience is not the obedience God expects. This woman didn't delay her obedience in doing what God had asked her to do through the prophet. Remember, Elisha was speaking for God in this situation. She obeyed immediately. Verse 5, she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her. They kept bringing jars, and she filled one after the other. The jars are filling up. Verse 6, soon every container was full to the brim. It's a miracle. The olive oil had multiplied, right? This could only be God. She says to her son, bring me another jar. And her son says, there aren't any more. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. Last verse, verse 7. When she told the man of God, Elisha, what had happened, he said to her, now sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over. So what happened here is the olive oil multiplied, so much so that the woman could sell enough olive oil to pay her debts. She had so much debt that this guy was gonna come take both of her sons as slaves. And she got, olive oil's like, what, like $3 for a thing of olive oil? and she got so much olive oil that it equaled the amount that her husband had owed that was gonna get her son sold into slavery. That's a lot of olive oil. Not only that, she had so much more left that Elisha told her to sell the rest and live off of it for her and her sons. God provided more than what she needed. In this story, we see the woman obey. We see the woman work hard. And there's so many things that we can focus on and learn from this story. It's an incredible story. We could focus on the miracle. We could focus on the woman's obedience. We could focus on Elisha speaking for God. We could focus on all of these things. But I want us to look back at verse number 2 and see what Elisha asked the widow when she came to him with this problem. It says this, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 2. We're reading it again. So first, she says, I have this problem. My sons are going to be sold into slavery. What can I do to help you? Elisha asked. Look right here. Tell me, what do you have in the house? What do you have? Elisha didn't just immediately say to her, oh, I'm so sorry that you have your problem. Here's a check just to meet all your needs. God could have provided in that way. But no, Elisha asked the woman, what do you have? What he's asking her to do is to give what she had, no matter how much or how little, and watch God do the rest. He is giving this woman an opportunity to be a part of something that she could never do on her own. I know of someone else who one time asked people, what do you have? And his name was Jesus. In Matthew chapter 15, verse 34, it's not gonna be on the screen. Jesus had over 4,000 people came and watched to listen to him speak and preach. It was 4,000 men, and you could probably triple that if you add the women and children. And he realizes, these people are hungry. We're so far away from a town. They're hungry. They've been here for days probably. We need to feed them. So he asks his disciples, he says, help me feed all these people. And the disciples say, where are we going to get the food? And Jesus says, what do you have? And then they bring this stuff. They probably got it. It doesn't mention it in Matthew, but they probably got it from someone else. They bring this stuff to Jesus. It's just a few loaves and a few fishes. And Jesus multiplies it to feed over 4,000 people. So the question that I think God is asking you and asking me during this month of generosity is, what do you have? What do you have to give? God doesn't need you. God doesn't need your money. He could do miracles without us, but he's asking us what we have so that we can be a part of something great, so that we can be a part of something more, so that we can be a part of something that we can't do ourselves. And the woman responds and says this, when Elisha asks her, what do you have? She says, nothing at all except a flask of olive oil. She didn't say nothing at all, period. There's a comma there. Nothing at all except this olive oil. And that was the olive oil that God used to do the miracle. That was the olive oil that God used to produce and provide for her and her family. That was the olive oil that God multiplied. What do you have? She could have stopped at nothing at all. She could have said, well, I'm poor, I'm broke, I don't have any money, I have nothing at all, period. But she pushed past nothing at all, and she looked to the except. She said, I have nothing at all except this. Give what you've got and watch God do the rest. Give God what you have and watch what he can do with no matter how much or how little we have to give. You know, this passage, some may look at this and say that, when we give to God, he's gonna give us back so much more than we gave to him. He might. I'm not gonna stand up here and say that he won't. I'm also not gonna stand up here and say that he will. I believe he's gonna take care of you, but you might not be rich. He might not give you tons and tons of olive oil to sell and get rich. But I do know that when we give and we're obedient to God, he's gonna take care of us. This woman could have stopped at nothing at all, but she pushed past it and she said nothing at all except. This month, I wanna challenge you. I wanna challenge myself and my family. When we stand up here on this stage and we ask you, what do you have to put in here to give to one of our Heart for His House partners, Wellstead? We say, what do you have? Don't say nothing at all. Push past that and look at accept. And I may be even losing some of y'all right now. I'm not just talking about money. Maybe you don't have any money. Well, what else do you have? What else do you have? What talents and skills do you have that you can use to raise money this month and give? That's getting creative in your generosity. What passions do you have that you can go out and use for the glory of God and use to help raise money this month for Wellstead? One of our 9th grade boys, Lucas Antonelli, came up to me last week. He's a runner. He said for every mile he runs this month, he's gonna pledge a certain amount of money and he's gonna find people to sponsor him in that. That's pushing past, I have nothing at all. That's going to that accept and getting creative in your generosity. Answering the question, what do you have? Because here's the thing, your nothing at all except is more than enough for God. Your nothing at all except blank is more than enough for God. The olive oil in this story, that one little jar of olive oil, that next to nothing that the woman had, was more than enough for God to do a miracle in her life. Well, guess what? That $1 and some change you have sitting around, that's more than enough for God to do a miracle and bless people in need. That change that's in your pocket, I actually have some. I didn't plan on doing this, I promise. Do I? Yeah, I do. That's more than enough for God to do something. The talent that you have, the gifting that you have, the passions that you have, that you can use in creative ways is more than enough for God to do a miracle. Push past nothing at all and answer the question, what do you have? What do you have? What little amounts of money or large amounts of money do you have that you can give? What talents or resources, what passions do you have that you can give? Tonight, our small groups are gonna look just a little bit different than usual. Tonight, you're gonna have some applications along with some questions in your small group. You're gonna have not only some questions that you're gonna answer and talk about, but some things that you're gonna do in small group. The first is this, and your small group leaders have all of this information, so you don't need to write it down. You can if you want. But the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna fill out a commitment card, committing either to tithe or to give an offering to Wellstead if you haven't already done that. And here's the thing. Even if you can't give any money, I would be so proud of you if you were bold enough to actually fill out the card and put 0 instead of just not doing it at all. As your pastor, I'm expecting you to fill out a card. We had 113 cards turned in last week, which means a lot of people didn't turn them in. I talked to your small group leaders too and asked them to fill out, make sure they fill out a card as well because they're gonna lead the way. And remember, it's not about the amount, it's about the obedience. It's about responding to what God has called you to do. So if you haven't filled out a commitment card or you weren't here last week, you can do that in small groups. And I want you to follow through on that commitment. The second application, the second thing that you're gonna do, that we're challenging you to do, is to share a video with some people in your family. So earlier this week, I did the hard part for you. I recorded a video explaining what we're doing this month for Wellstead. Talking about how much money we have to raise, talking about why we're doing it. And I addressed that to your family, to your parents. It's on YouTube. You can find it on the North Students YouTube, or your small group leaders can send you the link. And my challenge for you is to send that, because I emailed it to all of your parents, but they probably don't read their emails, let's be real. Your job is to send that video or show that video to one person that you know. It can be your parent or your guardian. It can be a big brother, big sister. It can be a friend or family member that doesn't know what we're doing here. Anyone, a neighbor. It says a message to parents, but it's not just for parents. So that's your second challenge, is to share that video. I did the hard part and did all the talking. You just send it to them. Thirdly, we're gonna be faithful with what we have. We're gonna be faithful with the little bit that you have. Can I say something? I wasn't planning on saying this. There were some people in this room, well, maybe they're here, they were here last week for sure, that on that card, they wrote that they were committing to give $500 to Wellstead. That was the biggest amount we had, and that's amazing. And then there was some cards that said $1. And I'm the only person that's seen those cards. I didn't show them to your leaders. I didn't show them to Jera. I didn't even show them to my wife. I'm the only person that knows. And do you know which one made me tear up a little bit? Do you know which one made me prouder? Was it the 500 or was it the 1? It was the 1. It was the 1. Because I just knew in my heart that you're being faithful with what you have. The reason we average it out and say $36 a person isn't to shame people that can't give 36. It's to realize that we're in a family and that some people are gonna give 500 plus and that some of us can give less than that. We're in this together. We're gonna be faithful with what we have, whether it's a few cents or a few $100s. I want you to be faithful in your giving. And the last one, this is the fun one. I want you to actually get creative in your generosity. You together as a small group, I'm challenging you and your leaders to raise $100 as a group. This is on top of your personal commitment. And I want you to get creative. If you just want to say, okay, there's 10 of us, let's all bring $10 next week. Check, that's fine. That's fine. But maybe you can say, hey, let's host a garage sale together. Let's all next week bring stuff that we don't need and we'll try to sell it on Facebook Marketplace and try to raise $100. Let's go mow somebody's lawn and ask if they'll sponsor our small group if we do yard work for them. And here's the thing, this is just an opportunity for you to have fun as a group. You'll never have more fun than when you're giving. To get creative. I'm not gonna come back and ask you or your small group leaders, hey, did you guys turn in your $100? No. This is just an opportunity for you to practice giving, to lead the way in generosity, to have fun with your friends. So you're gonna get creative, whatever you wanna do. The challenge is $100 per group by the end of the month. Would you close your eyes with me for just a second? I want you to imagine what it would look like if all of us that are in this room, if all of us that are a part of North Students make a commitment to tithe and to give an offering, and we actually follow through on that. If we do that, we will reach our goal. And because of a generous donor, that goal is gonna be doubled. And we're gonna give an extravagant amount of money away to bless people. Imagine how amazing that is gonna be. Imagine. Here's the thing, on December 6th, Wellstead's gonna be here and we're gonna give them a giant check. And imagine seeing that check and seeing the number written on there and seeing I'm a part of that. My small group contributed to that. My family contributed to that. We made a difference. Imagine how we could even double, triple, or quadruple that if all of us include our family and our friends that aren't here right now. Because here's the deal. If all of our moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, big brothers, big sisters, friends, family also gave an average of $36, that's like $50,000. Why not? God can do that. Imagine all you gotta do is share the video and then it's up to them from there. Imagine if we're all faithful in what we have. Imagine if we all give what we can. We push past the awkwardness of, oh, well, I can't give as much as so-and-so. No, be faithful with what you have. Honestly, the only reason that I look at the commitment cards is so I can know how close we are to the goal. I just add it up and get rid of them. That's all I do. It's between you and God and your obedience. Imagine if we get creative in our generosity and work together as small groups and each of us raises $100. There's 12 small groups. That's $1,200 on top of the commitments that we've already made in the month. We collected over almost $1,000 last week already. Imagine if we have another $1,200 on top of that from our small groups. Imagine when we give that big old fat check to Wellstead and they go and we're able to help them purchase the land that they're looking for. And then we go together, we get on a school bus and we drive out to the land and we help them get it ready. We dig up trees. I don't know what else you've got to do, but get it ready. And then they get houses built out there. And they get to serve people out there. And they get to love people out there. And families are restored out there. And lives and hearts are healed out there. And people are set free out there. And memories are made out there. And lives are changed out there. And we hear about those stories. And we get to say we were a part of that. All because when they asked, what do you have? We pushed past the nothing at all and we said, I have this. This is what I have. Give what you have. Imagine whether you give $1,000 or $1. We're all gonna be a part of that. We're all in this together. I'm ready to start dancing, High School Musical. We're all a part of this. Imagine the impact we could have on countless lives and people in our community when we give what we have. Here in a moment, I'm just gonna pray. And while I'm praying, if you have an offering with you tonight, they're gonna put a slide up on the screen. It's Venmo and Cash App. Just make sure you mark it North Students or North Students Wellstead. Or if you have coins or cash, while I'm praying, you don't even have to wait for me to be done. Just go ahead and bring that up to the buckets or give online. Dear Lord, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Thank you that we're a part of a church that is helping to advance and spread the gospel, not just in these walls, but in our community, in our city, in our country, across the world. Lord, we know that you're asking us, what do we have? Lord, I pray that right now you give us the encouragement, the wisdom, the discernment to get creative in our generosity. To find those coins we have lying around the house or in our cars. To come up with creative and fun and effective ideas to raise money as a group. Lord, and we know that when we come back in a month and when we see what we've done together, God, we're gonna be happy and we're gonna celebrate, but we're gonna know it's all because of you. Taking that little bit that we have and doing something amazing with it. We love you, Jesus. Thank you for letting us be a part of what you're doing. It's in your name we pray. And everybody said, amen, amen.